Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast, where our goal is simple: to learn from the best and discover how we can all live a better life, build a more fruitful business, and be more productive. Join us each week as we interview fellow entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and leading experts to discuss everything from marketing secrets to new technology and life as an entrepreneur.
Hello and welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sonnenberg, and today we actually have two guests on the podcast, both from Delegate Solutions. We have the CEO, Emily Morgan, and Amanda Kelly, both from Delegate. Now, a little background info might be helpful before getting into this episode. As you may or may not know, my company Leverage, we started out in 2015, and we started off as a virtual assistant company. And we would do back then all kinds of administration work, from booking flights to scheduling, social media posting, etc. But like most companies, we started morphing, we started realizing what our unique ability is. So we stopped actually doing virtual assistant work and we moved into marketing, operations, really anything related to growth. And right now, a huge amount of work has been on the operational efficiency side of things, getting businesses set up to be remote. So it was a tough switch, but it was really the right move. Now, I bring all this up because our two guests today are from Delegate Solutions, which is a virtual assistant company, and they're doing some great things for entrepreneurs. In fact, when we removed our admin portion of the business, we started referring people to Delegate Solutions. So Delegate Solutions is unique in that they offer a very comprehensive package. Again, this is more for a high-level entrepreneur. You're probably a team of at least 5, if not more than 10, probably doing in the 7 figures at least for Delegate to be a good fit for you. We'll get into some of the specifics in this episode, but one thing that I feel they've really nailed is that they focus a lot on delegation coaching with their clients. And one of the biggest problems we had at Leverage when we were doing VA type of work was that people didn't really know what to delegate or even how to delegate. And it's really common for entrepreneurs because a lot of us struggle with letting go of things in our business, and you're used to doing everything on your own. And it can be scary to hand the reins off to someone else. And even when it's something small, even once you get comfortable with the idea of delegating, the mechanics of handing things off to someone else can be difficult. I often say that delegation is a skill, and it really is. And if you're not skilled at delegating, you sometimes can end up wasting more time by delegating something than if you were to do it yourself. You know, no one's a mind reader, yet a lot of the times when we delegate, we have this assumption that people are these magical mind readers. So Delegate Solutions, as the name implies, understands this well, and they've really found their niche in helping entrepreneurs improve their delegating skills while also getting things off their plate. We get into some really great tips and tricks for delegation in this episode that I think you're going to find very useful, whether you need a administrative assistant or not. I think that some of the concepts of delegation is still really critical regardless. If you are interested in using them, we have a special discount for people. You could even just message them and just tell them that you came in because of the Leverage Podcast. Or if you go to info.delegatesolutions.com/leverage, you can get that discount via that link. Hope you enjoyed this episode and speak soon. Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sonnenberg. And today, like always, we have some very special guests. But these guests I've known for a while, particularly Amanda Kelly, I've known for a while. And Amanda works at Delegate Solutions with Emily Morgan, who's the CEO of Delegate Solutions, which is a virtual assistant company. Emily was introduced to me, I think Lee Brower introduced us. So Lee Brower, my partner at Bullseye, has been using their services for a while and introduced us. And Emily is in the strategic coach ecosystem. I'm very close with Dan Sullivan and Shannon Waller and obviously Lee Brower. And Emily's been serving a lot of the strategic coach clients in a virtual assistant capacity. And Leverage, my company, has been serving that community amongst others, entrepreneurs in these mastermind groups, but much more so on an operations and marketing. And Leverage pivoted earlier this year and we stopped doing any admin and virtual assistant work altogether. So it was really nice to connect with you, Emily, because a lot of our clients needed a home to go to. So it's been nice to be able to send them your way. And I'm excited to have this conversation because regardless if we're doing admin delegation or marketing or operations, I think delegation is a skill that can be learned over time. So I think what I'm interested in getting into in this call, amongst many different topics, but I think our listeners would really get a lot from learning the art of delegation. And then I think something I come across, and I'm sure you do too, is people don't even realize how much they can delegate. So it'd be, I think, really an interesting conversation to open people's awareness to how much they don't need to do anymore and how much they can get off their plate. Why don't we start just sharing a little bit about what is Delegate Solutions and how do you guys work?
So we're a premium virtual assistance firm. So that means all we do is virtual assistant work. Specifically, we work exclusively with entrepreneurs. And everything we've built over the last 12 years is really about catering to what entrepreneurs need when it comes to delegation. And as you know, like being a coach and all that, like it's a really hard process specifically for entrepreneurs to really let go of things. And there's trust that has to occur and there's communication that has to occur. But we work with them to figure out what to delegate and how to delegate and then start to pull it off their plate strategically. We do that by working in teams. So we have a thinker and a doer assigned to the accounts so that they work together in tandem. And that's also there to ensure that you're never in a position where all of a sudden you lose an assistant, nobody knows what's going on. It's a really terrifying place to be for an entrepreneur who has given up things and it's been a really hard journey for them. So a lot of our work is delegation coaching and helping people put a plan together around what they're going to hand off their plate. And we actually track progress made against that strategy over time to see the progress of our work.
So how does the delegation coaching work? Is that during onboarding, you come up with a game plan? Like what are all the things in coach terms? Like what are all the things that don't give you joy or not in your unique ability? And that becomes some report that you benchmark against how much you can get off their plate?
Yeah, I'm going to speak a little about it and then I'll let Amanda, because Amanda's actually doing so much of this work once clients come in. But a lot of clients come in, some of them know what they want to hand off their plate. Some of them are like, I have no idea. I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. So where we always come in at is, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And then we build out the delegation from there. And we'll always take things like scheduling, inbox, travel, personal tasks, marketing tasks, research, things like that. Kind of low-hanging fruit things that will make a larger impact over time. But we want to make sure, since we're working with them 1 to 2 hours a day, that what we're doing is really strategic and impactful. So we always start with the goals. And I'll let Amanda speak to what that looks like when people come in.
Yeah, I think that just to build on what Emily said, a lot of times people come because either they think that they know what they want, or they've reached this bottleneck situation where they're really overwhelmed. They've tried unsuccessfully maybe before to have some type of assistant, whether it's in-house or remote, and they just don't know how to free up any time or to move in any direction. So that's usually like when we get people in the door. I think what we do really well is a lot of times, clients, they feel like they have to already know what to delegate or know what to hand off or know how to use our service. And to speak to Emily's point, you really don't have to understand anything about delegation to get a benefit out of Delegate Solutions, because, the way that we onboard is we dig for that. We look for the bigger picture. My high fact find asks a lot of questions, and we really look for the big picture, and we end up being able to suggest things or make recommendations that most of the time they didn't even think about. They come to us for one thing and then they get something a little bit different. That's usually more than what they expect in that area. So it usually goes through an onboarding, asking a bit of questions to get the information that we need, so we could do some shadowing and get in there and kind of see how things are currently set up. We like to build on existing systems. That's really important for us, not just to implement stuff for the sake of it. So that's how we kind of get started, like Emily said, based around what they consider their goals for the year to be, but really expanding past that to create something that allows them to sustain and build, from where they are now. Like Lee Brower says, lift where they stand, right?
We've found the same thing where someone might not realize what they want or might come in because they want a podcast, but really when you look under the hood, they need a full-blown marketing strategy and social media management and maybe a book that they want to write, and maybe they need their processes documented and all. So what they come in for might not at all be what we end up doing. Do some people come to you without knowing at all what to outsource, and you get them to sign up like kind of on the hope that they're going to figure it out, and then you uncover that on the onboarding? Because that's been one challenge, at least with us, when someone doesn't know what they want and you ask them, all right, we'll just sign up and we'll figure it out. That's a much harder conversation than like someone comes knowing what they want. So how do you deal with that?
Emily, just to speak to that a little bit, I think one of our values at Delegate is transparency. So we say it right up front on the first call, trust the process. We ask them to trust the process. We've done this with hundreds of entrepreneurs, like we developed this methodology. So I think a large part of this, especially for people that are not sure or not exactly sure, like we ask them up front, are you willing to trust the process? And I think that gets them in the door, to having their mindset right, to understand that we could possibly help them. And usually like the way that we have things set up right out of the gate, they can start to feel a little easier breath right away. And the stress, they start to see the value kind of right away. And then that allows them to trust the process a little more. And then they start to see, oh, okay, this is how value. And it really organically grows. It is difficult, Nick, when you have people that are very apprehensive or that don't trust the process. But I've seen you do this very well yourself in different capacities. People come and they want this certain solution. And you're like, wait a second, what are you trying to do with that? I saw you do it just last week. And you're like, well, what about this? And you're like, actually, and so that's a lot of what we do in certain respects. They come and they're really kind of narrow thinking. And then we pick at it and ask more questions. And then it gets broader and it makes more and more sense.
And I think that's where we're similar, but obviously we're doing different services now, but at least from just a high level, that white glove service where I guess as Jay Abraham says it's the client relationship, not a customer, looking at it from the lens that they're your clients, you have a fiduciary duty. And sometimes they might ask for something and we'll push back and be like, no, you don't need that. You just waste your money. And that's, I think, where companies like ours can really stand out, because you go to another company, maybe the hourly rate's cheaper, but they're not going to be having that fiduciary type of client relationship where they've got your back and they're telling you and advising you where to invest and not to invest, right? So that's something that always comes up. Oh, well, I could go on Upwork or somewhere and find someone for X dollars an hour. And it's like, great, if you think that that's better. But these are all the reasons why actually looking at the hourly rate's not the right way to look at it. It's how much is it going to cost in total, including the value of your time, which most people aren't looking at. A lot of these entrepreneurs and strategic coaches, their time is worth $100 to $1,000 an hour in some cases. And you have to factor in, like if you work with a more junior person and you have to redo the work or you have to hold their hand more, factor in your hourly rate into that equation and compare total cost to total cost. And what I find almost 100% of the time is actually it's so much cheaper to go with a more premium freelancer, service, company, whatever, when you start looking at it from that lens. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say we're probably the most expensive VA firm out there.
on an hourly rate basis.
Hourly rate, totally.
Right.
But what you're getting is an account manager, you're getting 2 team members, you're getting trained backup, you're getting methodologies that our team has already spent years putting together around how we take scheduling off your plate. So you're in this different position where you're being led instead of having to lead and manage and retain and all of that stuff that comes with an employee or a basic VA.
Right. So what are some of the most common things you're seeing as requests right now at Delegate? Is it email and scheduling are the most common?
I think that traditionally where we can create a lot of value for anyone, even people that think that they're really buttoned up in the scheduling in the email department, like to me, that's always something that like we have good systems around so we can improve. And so we always do that for everybody that comes in. I think that a lot of people that come in and like some recently, they're at a place to where they can scale, but the business systems are not set up to support that scalability. They need to bring new people in, but they virtually, they don't have good onboarding set up, or, they have all their company processes and everything lives in the entrepreneur's head or kind of scattered about. Usually it's like they know that they're at a place to where they can't take anything else on, but they don't have the work power or the methodology or the practices in place to be able to scale anything. And it's too big of a cleanup project for them to do on their own.
For people listening right now that maybe, they're used to in the office, full-time employees. They've never worked with a freelancer or a virtual assistant, not to mention they've never worked remotely. What are some pieces of advice you might have for those people?
Well, I think an understanding of the model of how we work with clients. So we basically sell time for money. The team tracks their time by the minute, and people buy blocks of hours. And what happens when you work with this type of resource is you really have to think about what you're handing off to them, because if we're working for you 1 to 2 hours a day, it's really hard to be responsive across the business day in a way that you might be used to if you had a full-time person. So just an understanding of the model of how this service actually gets delivered, I think, is an important piece.
What kind of training do you do with clients to be better delegators? Or what are the do's and don'ts of delegation? Like I remember early days when we were doing virtual assistant, we would get tasks like book flight, and that was all the information that we were given. And it was like, maybe you want to tell us where you want to go or when would be helpful.
Some of the benefit is a lot of the clients that we do get are likely because they are from strategic coach. So they speak in that vernacular, like they're thinking in that way. They're trying to lean on those tools. So the good thing is, like, for instance, like I've been working with people in coach for over 6 years. So like we all also speak the same terms, and we can reinforce the tools. So
do you force an impact filter to start any task or project?
Force is a tough word, but we do very, like with certain clients, for example, like with Lee and others, like we won't get started because they said that, look, hold me accountable. And part of what we do really well is that accountability piece. Because,
right.
You can go to coach, you can get the mindset, but what happens between when you're at coach and when you go back to coach? That accountability piece.
Right.
And, you're working to help people with that across.
Oh, exactly. And that's why it's Coach and other programs like Coach, like I'm in Genius Network with Joe Polish, but you go to these places, you get all these ideas and you come back with papers and notebooks full of all these ideas. And now it's like, well, how do you actually execute it? So you strongly encourage an impact filter to be filled out.
Experience transformer also, because we're remote and communication is really the foundation here.
Yeah.
An experience transformer and being able to be comfortable to give feedback and work and commit to work through that process to make the relationship better.
It might be worthwhile. Could you explain for the audience? A lot of our listeners come from Coach, so they probably know what you're talking about. But for those that aren't familiar with strategic coach or what an impact filter is, would you mind explaining that?
An impact filter is really a delegation tool. So you basically work through the sheet and you talk about what does success look like. And for us, the really important part is what are the success criteria of that particular thing. And it also allows the entrepreneur to really check themselves around whether or not this is something that they have a lot of energy and excitement for. And then the experience transformer is about what worked and what didn't work in a situation and what can we learn from it.
So after every piece of work that you finish, do you send an experience transformer? Like if they asked you to book a flight, would you send an experience transformer after that?
The way that we usually do it is because everybody, like I like to handhold a lot and everybody learns differently. So, a lot of people that go to coach, they hate to fill those forms out, but on a quick call, we could verbally walk through it. So I could prompt them verbally, what worked well for you? And then they ideate and tell me, and I type that down. Okay, what could be better?
I see.
And then we create a strategy circle around that. So that's genuine, but there are those clients that like to get into their coach, online platform, fill it out and then share it. And so we've got systems set up to support us reviewing it and, talking through it at a later time.
And when someone wants to kick off work with you, is there some structured data that you try to collect up front before you start working? If so, what is the structured data that you're collecting?
It's just a lot of questions in it, Emily.
Yeah, it's an intake form. So what we tell clients is we collect like the details that we need to do the job before we go into the kickoff call. So Amanda runs the kickoff calls with clients and really hones in on the delegation strategy. And she's using this intake form where we talk about goals and priorities. What does success look like? What are the success criteria for you? And we actually track that week over week. Are we hitting the things that you're saying that you needed to get out of this relationship in a scorecard?
So that's like overall on an account level, what you're doing, but on a per task level, like if tomorrow Lee Brower asks you to do something, are you running through like a checklist of all the things that you need to pull out to clarify before you get started?
If Lee Brower specifically asked me to do something, I'm asking him for an impact filter. But if, let's say, we have people that come in, that
a normal person, not a Lee Brower.
But we have people that come in, like I say, that aren't in coach. So just handing them an impact filter may not be helpful. But people, they think they know what they want to do, or they're quick starting and they're only thinking through half of it. So it's important for us as a strategic remote resource to understand the why, the purpose, and what must be true when this is finished. And so in some capacity, we do push back for more information because, like Emily says, I think the entrepreneurs genuinely like that because it allows them to also think through it for themselves. So they don't start so many things that they set down with actually not able to finish or with the intention to finish.
Gotcha. We were extremely loose with requirements, and then we would have to go chasing post task creation or project kickoff. So we just changed, in order to start any task or project with us, we're forcing people to put a description and their vision of kind of the why, support materials, any background, what's the desired outcome and success criteria, skills needed, and a budget and a deadline. Mm-hmm. So we went from basically just a title to asking now all of that stuff so that we're much more set up for success. Because what at least, I'm sure you've seen the same, but asking the why usually clarifies a lot of things. Once you know why someone wants something, then it empowers someone to fill in gaps, and it takes a lot of the pressure, I find, off of the entrepreneur to have to give you every single detail. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of cases, if the why is really clear, the freelancer can come up with sometimes better solutions or parts of solutions that maybe the entrepreneur wasn't even thinking of.
Yeah.
That hit the nail on the head. Exactly. Because a lot of times people, like I say, they think that they know what they want, but they really just know what they're aiming for, and the how is not necessarily on point. So you're right on with that.
Right. At the end of Bullseye, one of the attendees came up and was saying that they want to set up Asana to solve a particular problem. Remember that?
Yeah, that's
that
what I was thinking about earlier.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And you have to take a step back and really just get high level. What are we actually trying to solve here? And tools and solutioning should come once you're really clear, I think, on the problem and the why. And it turns out that Asana is not the right tool. And that was my hunch from the beginning. But you have to take that step back and really have a really clear understanding of what's the problem that we're trying to solve. So are there any things that you've been surprised that people ask you to delegate that you can share?
Not at this point. We've seen it all. I had a client when I first started the company, I was the VA. So I was doing all the work.
I was too.
And it was my old boss was a client, and he was just a piece of work. And he literally delegated, can you send my driver to my mansion to pick up my pants and drive them down to the shore?
That's fun. Yeah.
That type of stuff. So we've seen it all. Admins in particular, we know all the juicy secrets.
I'll give you a couple examples. When we were doing VA work, we were asked to ship breast milk to Mexico twice by different people.
Twice?
Oh, there was a lot of drug requests. Hey, could you get us cocaine to Pennsylvania or something? And then we had
scurrying at Delegate.
We had another one. Could you take the real estate license exam for me?
Oh my God.
So we had some pretty interesting ones. Just curious if you had any like that.
I haven't really experienced anything like that recently because mainly I'm in the strategy work now. So I'm the one asking all the questions and just kind of poking around trying to create this roadmap of strategy. But I'm sure that our team gets the most random things from time to time.
What would you suggest people do to get stronger at delegating? Because I feel like it's a skill. I mean, the services that we provide are valuable, and it allows people to grow, scale, be in their unique ability. And that's one thing. But I find that the art of delegation helps you be a better leader inside of your company, even with your W-2 employees. What are some ways that people could kind of train that delegation muscle that you might suggest?
Start small. So start small to build confidence. So really focus on, a specific project or task that isn't too scary for you. Something we see a lot of, especially when it comes to scheduling, people say, I don't want to hand off my schedule. We'll say, okay, Well, let's just look at one part of your schedule. So let's just look at scheduling your sales calls, and let's put a system together around how that's going to work and what automations we might be able to use. So compartmentalizing like a larger picture is a really great approach too, because I find myself, like I have an idea, and if someone will just get it started for me and like get it to 80%, and then I can take it the last 20% through, will help me get things done. I don't know, Amanda, if you have anything.
I think that's really smart. I jotted down a couple of things when he asked that, and 80-20 was one of the things I wrote down, because I think anybody in coach or just in general, like maybe, we could do 20% of it, or you could do the last 20% of it. So thinking about cutting it up is good. I think, if you are somebody that's focusing on unique ability, you could start trying to delegate through the lens of what are the things that I'm really bad at, or what are the things that are really energy draining. And then last, I find easiest is most people already have recurring processes, or at least something that happens on a repeatable basis, whether it's documented or organized or whatever. Those things are in your business that happen. So if we could find a few of those things that are recurring and that kind of happen without consequence, then usually you can give those things up, because usually people feel better about picking a few of those little things to give up, because it's a less of an ask, and then they start to trust the process from there, and then they'll give on bigger things, if that makes sense.
For email delegation, how do you handle that? Because I found that to be always the trickiest one. There's so many nuances to managing someone's email. I mean, I could have 1,000 people that I'm interacting with, over the course of a year. How does someone train someone else to understand that Lee Brower is more important than this person, less important than this person, and we're kind of texting right now about a book launch. So actually, even though normally they're priority 5, now let's put them up to priority 2 for the next month. How do you actually, I've found it very hard to delegate away my email. So I just manage it. Personally, I manage my own emails. But then again, 1, I'm probably a control freak, and 2, I'm pretty good with it because I know all the tricks to get to inbox 0. So how do you successfully manage someone's email?
Usually, like the way that we set things up for clients is they still are responsible for their inbox. They still have a one true inbox. So if it's in the inbox, it's for you to look at. So we have good methodology about how to kind of roll this out and bite it off to where it's not so overwhelming and you're not having to like sit there for hours and like go through like a list of people. But it kind of goes around the methodology of, so going back to coach, top 20, right? Everybody has their top 20 or they're inside the whirlwind or, so you can look at that, like start by saying, identify the VIPs or the top 20 people. And then, okay, who's your farm club or who are these people? So you create lists, and you already have organization around the types of contacts that you have. So that gets easier to kind of understand, who should be in the inbox and not. A lot of time you just have to go in with the mindset of Rome wasn't built in a day. So you got to start with what you can do. So shadow, look and see what's happening going in and out. The unsubscribes, the junk, like that kind of stuff can go first. And once you start weeding out that stuff, then the rest of it kind of rises to the surface. And through some conversation work, you can start to narrow down who belongs there and like what maybe should be redirected to a secondary person or to an accounting software or, something else like that.
So shadowing is, to Amanda's point, exactly where we start. We watch and see what's happening. We learn, we make recommendations, then we start to take over and the client gives us feedback back. And that can go like just to that point. It can go all the way to you're not checking your email anymore and you're just getting a to-do list of what's in there for you to handle. It's really important that it's not just about figuring out like what's happening in the inbox, but having the communication around, what everybody's experiencing inside that inbox.
And what about for scheduling? How do you go about understanding how to schedule for someone?
Well, we always want to start with gatekeeper scheduling, where we sort of own the calendar and looking ahead and figuring out if you're in coach, free focus and buffer days, we're always going to start with that and get that working. Part of our service is about being proactive. So on these weekly calls with clients, we're looking ahead. Okay, you're going to be in Chicago in 2 weeks. We have hotel, car, flight. Is there anybody in Chicago that we need to try and set up an appointment with? And then it brings this different type of support experience than just book my flight. It's much more fluid.
Do you ever set up for clients? Like we're switching to HubSpot, but I've been using Mixmax and we've used Calendly for scheduling. Do you use that with your clients as well to help with the scheduling process?
Yep. We'll use, if they have existing tech, we'll use that. We'll roll out things like Calendly. And again, to the point where you don't have to use Calendly for your whole schedule, but for these types of calls, we're going to send a link, One
trick I've been doing is I created different versions and then I have subdomains that point to different versions. So there's like a subdomain that points to a 30-minute call versus a 60. And then I've kind of created my own system of what's an urgent call to have versus not, which would have different availability. So on the fly, I could just put the right subdomain for the scheduling link. So it's really easy for someone to book on the availability I want them to see.
Yeah. And I think another benefit that plays into the scheduling a lot is a lot of people that come to us, they either don't have a right hand, they haven't, had anybody helping them at all. And so, their schedule has basically been a free for all for whoever wants to schedule time. Or if they're the kind of person that doesn't like to say no, or they feel compelled to always say yes, then just simply having that process or that person in place that's a gatekeeper to where it's no longer personal, it's business. Like, this is my system, talk to the assistant about it, or go to the link. They don't have to put themselves in that position of being the one to say no or to make somebody feel like they're not worth the time.
Right.
It's just, well, here is the process. And some people have reservations and they think that's going to make, their team less apt to come or less appreciative or whatever. But really, I find the opposite happens, because once they realize there is a process and there's a very good way to get to the schedule or get on for a meeting, they really appreciate that more because you set up a system that allows them success. Whereas if you're the one entrepreneur trying to handle everything, you may have the willingness to help people, but invariably you're not going to be able to probably do it as well as if you've got somebody like helping you.
Right. What does the future of Delegate Solutions look like? Are there any upcoming changes? Is things going well and you're just going to keep improving on the core service? Like, you're going to offer some new services? Like, what's in the back burner?
Yeah, I mean, that's the strategy, is we're going to grow on what works. What we are about to roll out or in the middle of rolling out is expanded service. So we're going to offer part-time shared service. So if you're an entrepreneur and you need somebody 20 hours a week, we'll cover that. If you need somebody 40 hours a week, we'll cover that. So it'll be a fractional, part-time, and full-time options.
Gotcha.
Same exact service though, same model, everything, just more dedicated to you.
I see.
How about you guys?
Well, so a couple of things on our side. Thanks for asking. So one, we've gone more to calling ourselves a growth agency. So we were really focused within growth much more on the top line stuff, like sales and marketing. But now we're really doubling down on bottom line and doing the operational efficiency, especially as companies are moving to remote, getting them set up with systems and processes so that they can run not just remotely, but be efficient. And in a lot of cases, after you set up the right processes and systems, most people don't even want to go back to an office after they have that set up. So doubling down on that. And then a lot of what we do is, or all pretty much of what we do is timer based. So we do work at an hourly rate. We hit a start and stop timer. It comes out of credits that they purchased. We're starting to productize things. So that's going to be kind of the next iteration of leverage. Is you need a podcast done. There'll be, say, 3 packages. Do you want it once a month, twice a month, 4 times a month, or whatever it is, with different kind of pre-built features? And then they could just hit a button and have that. And then if they need anything custom above and beyond what's in the package, we'll do the timer to fill in the gaps. So rather than timer being 100% and it's all custom, we're going to shift to trying to target 80% pre-built products, and then the timer be 20%.
Nice.
So that's not rolled out yet, but maybe by the time this podcast comes out, we will be beta testing that.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, I want to be respectful of time. Where can people go to find out more about everything that you're up to?
Thanks. Delegatesolutions.com is where you can find us. Delegate Solutions on Facebook and LinkedIn also.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for both of your times today. As Dan Sullivan says, it's all about the who, not the how. So I feel like we are both really good who's for people's hows. So it's awesome always connecting and hearing about all the exciting things that you're up to.
Likewise. So glad to be here. Thank you.
What a great episode with Emily and Amanda. I want to give a big thank you to them for coming on the show, as well as a big thank you to Delegate Solutions for helping so many of our clients. If you're interested in learning more about Delegate Solutions, you can check them out at delegatesolutions.com, or you could go to info.delegatesolutions.com/leverage and mention that you heard about us on this show, and they'll take good care of you. If you haven't yet downloaded our remote communication guide, you can do that at getleverage.com/podcast. If you click on today's episode, you're going to be able to find a little form and get it right away. It's going to pop up in your browser. This is a quick and easy way to get set up for remote communication with your team or to improve your current communication system. So I highly recommend you check it out. And as always, if you like today's episode, please leave a rating and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for tuning in, and we're going to see you on the next one.